Would juice be similar to having, say, a drink like Coke or Pepsi or something?
A juice?
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar.
Same.
Yeah, not very much healthier at all.
Right. So
It'll have a few vitamins that Coke wouldn't have, but it's not significantly healthy, and it has almost similar amount of sugar depending on the fruit. If you think of an analogy, say of a blocked toilet, you could fix that two ways. You could turn off the cistern, which is like stopping eating carbs. It won't flood, but you haven't fixed the problem. It's still there. As soon as you turn the tap back on, it will flood again. So this is what taking out carbs is like. To fix the problem, you have to actually address the blockage.
So you've got to lose that fat.
You lose the fat in the muscle cell.
Right.
And then you get insulin sensitivity back, and you're not diabetic.
And you could do that by just basic exercising like walking, yoga.
No, it's mainly diet.
Okay.
Exercise certainly helps, but you have to change the diet.
Right.
It must be low fat.
Right. You did mention that it takes out dairy, which is a good thing.
Yes.
What is it particularly about dairy that's not good for human beings?
Well, it's designed for a baby cow.
Right.
Not even adult cows drink it. And we're designed to wean after a couple of years and move on to solid food, not to switch to breastfeeding from another species. There are enormous ethical and environmental problems with dairy production.
Right, yeah.
It's terrible for the cow. They have a worse life than beef cows.
Yeah, I've been to dairy farms and I've noticed that, yeah.
Well, they're forcibly impregnated every year. Their babies are stolen, which is very traumatic. They're intelligent, sensitive, social animals.
Yeah.
And they're milked until they slow down after about 4 years, then they're made into beef.
Hi all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monish, and if you followed me on any social media platform, you probably know that I'm a big health freak. My fitness journey started when I was 18 years old and when my best friend actually dragged me to the gym. But the real journey started in 2016 when I started understanding food and the science behind food and what food actually does to you when you eat a particular thing. And today with me, I've got Mr. Peter Johnston. He is a practicing dietitian here in Melbourne and he has a PhD in genetics. He specializes in gut health, eating disorders, diabetes, cancer, and inflammatory bowel diseases, and much more. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's a very informative podcast about food, and I'm sure you'll learn something about it. Peter, firstly, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I thought about where to start this podcast so many times in my head, but what I thought is we'll first start with the problem and then move on to a solution on what you think is the right solution. So, Peter, what do you think is the problem in food today? In food consumption, if you say today?
People are consuming way too much processed food, too much animal food, not nearly enough fruit and veggies, and the biggest deficiency of all is lack of fibre in the modern diet.
Yeah.
So it's estimated that about 97% of people in Western countries are not getting enough fibre.
And what role does fibre play in your gut?
The fibre is enormously important for just regular motility, so you don't get constipation and problems from straining too much, like diverticulitis, which is pouching of the intestine from blowing out like a balloon when you push too hard, or strokes. But much more importantly, the fibre is important for the health of the vast, diverse ecosystem of microbes that live in our gut, called the microbiome. And there are as many microbes there as we have human cells. And even more mind-blowingly, there's about 100 to 500 times more of their genes than we have human genes. And increasingly it's looking like all health and all sickness comes from whether your microbiome is healthy or unhealthy. In any health condition, if someone's unwell, you can see irregularities in the microbiome. And in the modern world, probably most people have a fairly dysfunctional ecosystem in their gut because of lack of fibre, because of things that inhibit the microbes like antibiotics, which have a role, they're life-saving when you need them. But
you've got to get back to eating those good foods so that the gut microbiome, as you said, comes back to its...
And it's not even clear if all the microbes ever come back after a dose of antibiotics.
Really? I didn't know that.
It may need a fecal transplant, FMT, fecal microbial transplant, which is only mostly in clinical experiments at the moment. But also too many preservatives, salt, oil, sugar, refined grains, too much animal food. These things are all bad for the microbiome. And so that's a large part of the modern diet is foods like that.
Yeah.
And that are fibre depleted. And so the microbiome just gets a pounding.
Right.
And
a lot of people that I know, and even I myself sometimes, tend to lean towards junk food when we are emotionally upset. Let's say if you have a burger or some chips, what happens when you have it?
well, firstly, that food is designed to be addictive. So the more you have, the more you want it. It's not entirely different from the way cocaine or heroin might react in us. Well, it's the salt, the sugar, the fat, and the businesses that create these products design them to be addictive because that's their business model.
Yeah.
They're not consciously trying to ruin your health.
Yeah.
They don't care
just
about your health. As
wanna
long as
sell.
you don't get food poisoning, they
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
They just need to sell more burgers to
That's
survive.
right. Yeah.
If Hungry Jack's is better than Macca's, then Macca's will go out of business. So they're trying to make them as addictive as possible.
As possible, yeah.
So that's the first problem. The food itself will make you gain weight because it's too energy dense, too
Right.
much refined
Right.
carbohydrates, and no fibre.
No nutrition enough.
Not enough
in that.
nutrition
Yeah.
in it, so you can be calorically over consuming, but undernourished in terms of fibre especially, but all the micronutrients and minerals that we need.
Right.
So that's the first problem. The second problem is that such food is likely to increase your rate of cancer.
Yeah.
The animal food is carcinogenic, especially when it's grilled.
Yeah.
The chips, when you fry starchy food like that in oil, it creates carcinogens.
And that's linked directly to cancer.
Yeah,
Right.
and carcinogen is something that causes cancer. So yeah, so the meat and the salt and the oil and the refined grain in the bun impair the microbiome
Right.
health,
Yeah.
which is deleterious. The saturated fat and the cholesterol is more likely to give you heart disease and diabetes.
Right.
You're more likely to get leaky gut or intestinal permeability, meaning you get pieces of intact protein going into the bloodstream, which can trigger autoimmune diseases.
Right.
So there's a whole cascade of negative impacts when you eat junk food like that.
If someone just eats it occasionally, is that acceptable? If you had a client who had it, say, twice a week or 3 times a week.
Well, it's still food.
Yeah.
It stops us starving.
Yeah.
But it's like saying, is it okay to kick your shin hard on a table once a week
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
twice a week?
Right.
Like, why would you?
Yeah.
If you know it harms you.
So if you could cook a burger at home, that would be way more nutritious, is what you're saying then.
It depends on the burger, it depends what you have it with.
Yeah.
If it's a replica plant burger, it's a little bit better, especially
Yeah.
for the animal that didn't want to die
Yeah.
and for the
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
The really meat-like ones are not that healthy.
Yeah.
They're good for helping people get off animal food
Yeah.
and as a transition food maybe. I wouldn't
Right.
encourage people to eat them regularly.
Yeah.
But if you have a big bowl of salad at home before your burger, you have lots of vegetables with it, you have a wholemeal bun.
How does the salad help if you have a salad before having a burger?
Well, it partly fills the stomach, so you're less likely to overeat on the
Overeat, yeah.
calorically dense food. But it's also getting us more of the fruit and vegetables we need every day because nearly everybody doesn't eat enough.
Enough, yeah. Yeah.
It's something like 95% of Australians don't meet the minimal dietary guidelines for fruit and vegetables,
Right.
which is 5 serves of veggies a day and 2 of fruit,
Right.
which is not that much.
That's
I
not a
would
lot, yeah.
eat double, triple that.
When you say a serve is probably what, a cup of veggies?
Half a cup,
Half
a cup, depending on the type of veggie.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
another, I feel something that's very prevalent in Aussie culture is drinking. There's a big drinking culture in Australia, and it's something that's picking up a lot in India now as the middle class grows in India, and they have not experienced that in the sense of, for example, in Australia, kids growing up have seen that, and it's not a big deal, right? But in India, for a lot of people, it is a big deal to go to a bar and start drinking, and that becomes kind of lifestyle. And you recently visited India, and you did mention that a lot of people are overweight as compared to what they were, I think, 20 years back when you went to India. 30 years back when you went to India. My question was, what does alcohol do to your body, from the gut perspective and also from what it does in terms of digestion, in terms of focus, in terms of even mental focus?
Well, first of all, it's fattening, so you're more likely to gain weight because it's just like drinking lots of soft drink, except it has ethanol in it, which has more calories than the sugar in a Coke.
Right. So even low-calorie drinks like, say, a vodka lime soda, which people consider as a low-calorie drink, which is probably 80, 90 calories a
Probably
drink.
less fattening, but you're still it's not as safe as drinking water. So the alcohol in the vodka or any other alcoholic drink is going to damage the microbiome for a start, because ethanol is used to sterilize things in the lab.
Yeah.
That's what I did when I did my laboratory research in genetics. 70% ethanol will kill everything it touches.
Right, really?
The World Health Organization have said it's a proven carcinogen.
Right.
Is a group 1 carcinogen, up there with asbestos, processed meats, plutonium, and things like that. So tobacco. So it's not advisable to consume a carcinogen on a regular basis, if at all, if you can avoid it. It, like you said, it impairs your judgment, so you're more likely to do stupid things or make unhealthy food choices.
Afterwards.
Unsafe behaviours with partners or whatever. So there aren't many upsides.
Do you drink?
I did in the past, and too much when I was much younger, but I don't drink it anymore. I haven't for about 8 or 9 years.
Okay. Not even a glass of wine?
No.
Nothing?
I don't miss it.
Okay.
You can get alcohol-free drinks, which I might have an alcohol-free craft beer sometimes, but it's still a fattening drink. It's like having a glass of lemonade or Coke. Like,
it is.
If it's a special occasion, Christmas, or with a nice visitor I'm hanging out with, then maybe.
Right.
But it's not in the house day to day.
Okay. I'd like to touch upon insulin resistance.
Sure.
Firstly, what is insulin resistance and how is it developed in the body?
Very common, and it's, as you said about India, lots of people are getting overweight, and diabetes is skyrocketing.
Right.
Same in China as well.
Right.
And half of all American adults are now estimated to be pre-diabetic or diabetic.
That's like 150 million people almost.
Half of all the adults. And this is from the Centre for Disease Control, so not, they're a reputable body. Insulin resistance is caused by intramyocellular lipid. To unpack that means fat in the muscle cells. So intra meaning inside, and myocellular mean muscle cell lipid is fat.
Yeah.
So that builds up if we have too much fatty food and have a high fat diet or even a moderately fatty diet. It can build up. Even in a lean person, so you don't have to be overweight to have this insulin resistance.
Okay.
Mostly people are overweight, which, as most adults are now in the modern world, even in the developing countries.
Australia's got a high obesity rate. I think it's the highest in the world per capita.
It's very high here. I think America's ahead still.
Okay.
But so insulin resistance means when that fat gets in the muscle cell, it makes it hard for the insulin to do its job of dragging the glucose out of the blood into the muscle where we need it. So the solution to that is to take the fat out of the diet and have a low-fat, plant-based diet, and you restore insulin sensitivity very quickly.
Right.
And become, in most cases, you can become non-diabetic.
How long does that take normally?
Weeks, 2-3 weeks if you go hard. It's very quick. But if you've left the type 2 diabetes too long, like you've had it for decades,
it goes into type 1.
Eventually it goes into type 1 and you need insulin, and then it may be no turning around. You can still get better insulin sensitivity, and I've helped a type 1 diabetic shift to plant-based, and they had to halve their insulin within 2 days.
Wow.
Never had it so low in their whole life. So that you can still improve the health and the insulin sensitivity at any stage of life. Okay. And it's very worth doing that, because insulin is a growth hormone promoter. So it's likely to increase your risk of cancer if you've got too much insulin floating around, because you have to pump it in because you've got insulin resistance.
So each time you eat anything, basically, the body pumps out insulin, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right?
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and from my understanding is that the body stops pumping out insulin. Is that what insulin resistance is?
No, it's pumping out more.
It's pumping out more.
Because the body's having trouble getting the glucose out of the blood into the muscles. Yeah. And so it pumps out more insulin, and the beta cells in the pancreas get overworked and conk out, because it's still registering that the glucose is too high. And so glucose is supposed to go a bit high after a meal, the postprandial spike, but then the insulin will kick in in response to that and take that glucose out of the blood to where it's needed. But it can't do that if there's insulin resistance. So the sugar stays high, so we make more insulin. And if it can't do it, it's still not working, because you've got that resistance.
Yeah. A lot of people, what they do is they cut out carbohydrates, because carbohydrates spike insulin more. Is that really a good thing to do?
No, you're treating the symptom, not the cause. So
Okay.
it's the cause is the fat in the muscle cell.
Right.
The glucose spiking is the symptom. So if you, say, had insulin resistance and went on a keto or paleo diet, that often will stop you having high blood glucose because you're not eating carbohydrates.
Right.
And you might lose weight, which is also good for diabetes. And so things improve on the short term, but medium and long term, it will make you die younger.
Because whenever I've tried to reduce my carbohydrates, one thing I've noticed is I don't sleep well.
I don't know
Just
about a
something.
relationship there, but we're designed to be a carbohydrate animal, eating animal. That's
Yeah.
all human civilizations have had a carb-centered diet, but none have had refined carbs until the present one.
Yeah.
Generally, I mean, Asian people have polished rice for a long time, but our ancestors before farming ate mostly starches. Through most
Potatoes,
civilizations, when we farmed, it was whole carbs. So taking out the starchy food or the carbohydrates is addressing a symptom, not the cause. It's, if you think of an analogy, say of a blocked toilet, you could fix that two ways. You could turn off the cistern, which is like stopping eating carbs. It won't flood, but you haven't fixed the problem. It's still there. As soon as you turn the tap back on, it will flood again. So this is what taking out carbs is like. To fix the problem, you have to actually address the blockage.
So you got to lose that fat.
You lose the fat in the muscle cell.
Right.
And then you get insulin sensitivity back and you're not diabetic.
And you could do that by just basic exercising like walking, yoga.
No, it's mainly diet.
Okay. Okay.
Exercise certainly helps, but you
Yeah.
have to change the diet.
Right.
It must be low fat
Right.
because that's the only way you'll lose body weight and also
Yeah.
withdraw the fat
Yeah.
from the muscle.
Moving on from this, intermittent fasting is a really big concept right now. A lot of people are doing it 12 hours, 16 hours fast. Does that help the body in any way?
Yes, it's good for the health, and it's also called time-restricted eating,
Right.
which is my preferred name for it because you're really shortening the feeding window and increasing the non-eating or the fasting
Yeah.
window. So it definitely helps, and everyone should do 12 hours overnight minimum.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's my thing.
So like 7 p.m. to 7
to
a.m.
7 a.m. It's not too hard.
No, it's not hard to do. And
Yeah.
if you want to lose weight or you want to give your gut a rest or help your microbiome or your immune system, it certainly doesn't hurt to do 14 hours fast and 10 hours eating. And some people go to 16-8 and they all work. It's all good for our health. We evolve with regular fasting anyway as a species because like any wild animal, we didn't have supermarkets or 7-Eleven or
Right.
restaurants. So we had to wake up in the morning and find our next meal.
Go hunting, yeah.
And sometimes in some seasons there was no food.
Yeah.
And so we might have gone weeks or longer without
Yeah.
food. And we certainly wouldn't have had meals 3 times a day.
Yeah.
When we found food, we would gorge
Yeah.
and eat as much as we could because some other tribe might take it from us or another animal might take it from us. So we'd stuff ourselves when we could. But fasting is a normal thing that we evolved
We
to
used
deal
to
with.
do-
And
yeah.
it seems to allow the immune system to work better. It's also known to be good for the microbiome.
Do you advise your clients to do that?
Yeah, mostly, but it depends where they're coming from. If they're shifting from a very unhealthy Western diet, I don't want to load up too many things to focus on.
Right.
It's more important what you do eat when you eat than how you eat and when you eat. First of all, I'd rather them get the food right and what they're putting in. And if they've got that organised, then I could talk about time-restricted eating. If they need an extra push, you know, sometimes losing weight, people hit a plateau and they're eating quite well, and so they need something else to move
Push
the
that. That's
move the
something
weight down
I
a
spoke
bit.
to you about. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
And so time-restricted eating is a good way to do that, and that can accelerate or get the weight loss back on track. But many people, you know, in a 1-hour consultation with me, there's a lot of stuff to cover.
To cover, yeah.
And for many people that can be overwhelming. So I don't want to give them too much to think about in one
Start with the
session.
basics and then
Get the main
just go.
stuff right, which
Yeah.
the most important thing is what you put in your mouth.
Would you recommend keto to anyone?
Definitely not.
Just no
No.
carbs, just fat and protein.
No, crazy diet.
Yeah.
It is better than the standard Western diet for a couple of reasons. They take out processed foods, which is great,
Yeah.
and they take out dairy products, which is great.
Yeah.
And so people often feel better and they can lose weight. It's generally hard to sustain long term.
Yeah.
And the research is very strong that it will shorten your life.
Is it?
It will put up your cholesterol, it'll increase the risk of cancer, heart disease.
That's crazy.
It's a really dangerous thing to do in the longer term. It was originally designed for a particular type of juvenile epilepsy, and it works for those kids, but it's not advisable for adults.
You can't really do it every day.
It's a fad. There's not evidence base for it. In fact, given that we know it shortens a life, I think for any health practitioner to recommend it, it's negligent if not malpractice. The science is very clear.
That's not.
You'll die younger. So that's not a good thing to offer any patient who's paying you for your help.
You did mention that it takes out dairy, which is a good thing.
Yes.
What is it particularly about dairy that's not good for human beings?
Well, it's designed for a baby cow.
Right.
Not even adult cows drink it. And we're designed to wean after a couple of years and move on to solid food, not to switch to breastfeeding from another species. There are enormous ethical and environmental problems with dairy production.
Right, yeah. It's
terrible for the cow. They have a worse life than beef cows.
Yeah, I've been to dairy farms and I've noticed that, Well,
they're forcibly impregnated every year. Their babies are stolen, which is very traumatic. They're intelligent, sensitive, social animals.
Yeah.
And they're milked until they slow down after about 4 years, then they're made into beef.
Wow.
Beef cows in Australia get to spend a lot of time out in the paddock and have a semi-normal life. So it's much worse for a dairy cow.
It's a very traumatic life.
It's traumatic and it's dreadful for the environment.
Yeah.
We need to dramatically reduce the amount of livestock on the planet. They're literally displacing the space for wild animals.
Right. Yeah.
60% of all the mammal biomass on the planet now is cows and sheep and pigs. And wild animals are now down to 1.5% of the mammalian biomass. Humans are about 34%. So I'm not sure if that maths all adds up, but roughly that. So, and they're pumping out methane.
Yes.
They're destroying the planet.
Yeah.
So in terms of the health consequences, it's full of saturated fat and cholesterol, which are terrible for our health. It's been shown that the casein, the milk protein, is carcinogenic and lead to cancer growth.
Right.
It's full of growth hormones, powerful mammalian.
Because it's for a baby cow.
Yeah, it's helping that baby cow grow really fast, way faster than a human grows. Like it's born small and it becomes like a 300 kilo adult within 18 months or so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really powerful growth hormones in that milk, which if you've got a microtumor, and many people over 40 will, it's like pouring kerosene on a fire.
Wow.
It's a crazy thing to do.
Well, what about the calcium you get from milk?
Well, it's in the milk, but it looks from when they've done experiments like because of all the animal protein you get, you have as much calcium loss as you do gain. Like it's one step forward, one step back. And the countries that have the most dairy products have the most osteoporosis. You can literally plot a linear relationship.
Right.
So the countries at the bottom that have no dairy generally don't have osteoporosis.
Okay. Now, India is a massive consuming nation of dairy.
Yeah, I know.
I think the biggest in the world by a distance.
Yeah, and there are other factors in terms of that bone strength, particularly exercise. So the countries at the bottom of that graph that have the least dairy do more physical exercise, which is important for bones. But there's no ever proven relationship between dairy product consumption and increasing bone strength. Anyone who hears that, they're just listening to marketing.
Right.
It's been a very, very sophisticated marketing campaign. Our ancestors never had dairy products for millions of years. Gorillas don't have it, adult cows don't drink it, adult deers with huge antlers made of calcium don't have milk.
No animals have it after a certain
point.
Well,
no. And they're strong, big, strong, muscular animals. Like a gorilla doesn't need dairy products to have strong bones.
Neither does the cow.
It's marketing, So there's all kinds of problems. Plus, just hygienically, because of industrial farming, automated milking of the cows, and most times there'll be one or two animals in the herd that have some mastitis. When they measure the milk, you can find pus cells in all the milk from the mastitis. So that's like what you get when you squeeze a pimple. So in Australia, the legal allowed limit is about 250,000 pus cells per cubic centimetre, which is not much.
Okay.
So they can't get rid of it. So they just make a legally allowable limit.
And that does it go off in the process of pasteurization? And
well, It's not, they're animal somatic cells from the body of the cow, so it's not a question of they won't survive in the milk, but it's just that that's not a nice thought to be drinking pus.
Sugar is another thing that is consumed enormously in today, and it's there in everything. Literally every packaged food would probably have sugar in it. What effect does sugar have on your body?
It's a drug-like effect. So like the McDonald's that you mentioned earlier, it makes food addictive.
Right.
We get addicted to that feel of the sugar, and it's empty calories.
It's nothing.
So it has nothing beneficial there. Unless you were starving, then it's certainly calories. It'll help you from starving, but there's no fibre, no minerals, no vitamins,
It
no other
spikes your blood
nutrients.
sugar tremendously.
Well, it goes straight in. Yeah, it's easily digested.
Yeah.
And we can deal with that if we're healthy.
Yeah.
So that's not the biggest thing. It corrodes the tooth enamel too if you don't brush your teeth. But it's just that it's empty calories and it's addictive.
Right. Even fruit has sugar.
It does.
So how is that different from refined sugar?
Well, it's in nature's natural package with lots of water and fibre, and when we consume it, it's even the best fruit. Like it would be hard to imagine sitting down and eating a dozen peaches or 2 kilos of strawberries.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
Whereas you juice those peaches or juice half a dozen apples, you could drink that in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have the fibre and it's pre-chewed, pre-masticated. So eating the fruit is sweet and delicious, but it doesn't do us any harm. It's nature's natural snack that we evolved to eat. And it's very healthy for us in that format. But if you juice it or you take out the sugar, then it's trouble.
Would juice be similar to having, say, a drink like Coke or Pepsi or something?
A juice?
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar.
The same.
Yeah, not very much healthier at all.
Right. So
it'll have a few vitamins that Coke wouldn't have, but it's not significantly healthy and has almost similar amount of sugar depending on the fruit.
If someone has insulin resistance or they are diabetic, would you still advise them to have fruit?
Plenty, lots of fruit.
How many serves of fruit would you advise them to have?
Whatever they feel like.
Okay, even though you have diabetes?
Yeah.
All right.
Because the diabetes is not a sugar problem.
Okay.
As I said before, it's a fat problem.
Okay.
In fact, in the 1930s, a scientist, Dr. Walter Kempner, put people on what was called the rice diet.
Right.
And these were type 2 diabetics.
Okay.
And he fed them white rice and fruit.
Yeah.
And their diabetes disappeared in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
Because that diet had essentially no fat.
Okay.
They could eat as unlimited fruit and white rice.
Right, and it was fine.
It's not what I'd call a healthy diet, but it still fixed their diabetes.
Right.
They were cured.
Yeah.
And we've known this for like 90 years.
Okay. Now, I'd like to move to plant-based diet from here. That's your specialty. You've been plant-based since 1991. Way before it was trendy to be plant-based. What made you make the shift?
I read an amazing book in 91 and it blew me away. So I had already been vegetarian for 10 years.
Okay.
And the book was...
What was the shift from? Because in Australia, growing up in Australia, I'm sure you had a lot of meat growing up.
I did. Well, I grew up in New Zealand, but we had a lot of meat,
Okay.
And in fact, in shearing gangs when I was a young man, 16, 17, 18, 7 of us would eat a sheep a day.
Oh,
we had 3 cooked meals a day. Breakfast, lunch and dinner. We did 12-hour days.
That's crazy. A sheep a day.
A sheep a day.
Wow.
7 workers in the shed and 1 cook.
So how did you move from there to being vegetarian? What triggered being vegetarian and then veganism?
I met a vegetarian girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
And she inspired me. And
to have.
Well, we just ate that way because it was easier in our flat with my sister and her boyfriend. And in those days, everyone put in money in a jar, and that was your food kitty.
Right.
And then you'd cook meals together or take turns. And
okay.
We couldn't eat together if we didn't have vegetarian meals. So we did that, and it didn't take long before I'd lost the taste for meat.
Right.
But then a decade later, I was in Montreal. I'd been travelling in India, and a woman I met who was a co-traveller mentioned this new book, which I hadn't heard about because it was pre-internet. And I got to Montreal and bought a copy. She recommended it, said, "You'll love this book."
It was 30 years back, right?
32.
32 years
back.
back.
91.
Okay.
And so the book was Diet for a New America by John Robbins, who's the heir to the Baskin-Robbins ice cream empire.
Oh, wow.
So his family were billionaires.
And he did mention that you should not have ice cream that's filled with milk and sugar.
Yeah. So he walked away from the family fortune and career there and became a vegan. And eventually wrote this amazing book, which was in 3 parts: the health, the ethics, and the environment.
All right.
So all the reasons for each.
For each of them. Because
and that blew me away.
what do you normally eat in a day, which is plant-based? What are the nutrients that you try to pack in a day for yourself?
Well, I don't think about the nutrients per se, because eating a wide variety of plant foods, you get what you need. Even a medium variety, it's very hard to get nutrient deficient, other than 2 things which are artifacts of modern living.
Yeah.
The first is B12, which is made by bacteria.
Yeah.
And because we treat our water and we wash our food, we don't tend to get it like a gorilla would. So a gorilla gets it from drinking from puddles and streams and unwashed food, not washing their hands, etc.
So we've got to supplement that.
Yeah, so we need to supplement B12. So I do think about that, and I keep it near in the kitchen where I make my cup of tea in the morning, so it's under my nose, can't forget. And the other one is vitamin D, because we don't get enough sun.
In Melbourne especially.
Yeah, and we evolved as outdoor animals. We didn't have houses.
Yeah.
And we were outdoors all of our day.
Because of my darker skin, I've realized this, that most Indians have vitamin D deficiency when they move to a country like Australia.
Yes.
Even though people think that Australia is sunny and bright all the time, not south of Australia. So most Indians actually have that vitamin D deficiency.
Yes, it's a trap. So you need more sun.
You need more
probably
sun.
double the time of a whiter person like me.
Yeah, because the body doesn't absorb it as much. And here we're always covered because it's cold most of the year. So then you don't get, even if you go out for a walk, it's just that your face is open.
Yeah.
And when I go out for a walk with my son in the morning, I try to get him to get as much sun, but you can't, because again, it's cold and windy.
Yeah.
And it's just, I make sure his roof is up and he can get some sunshine on his face.
I walk today though in shorts and t-shirt. I try to.
Yeah.
There's some science around being out of your comfort zone temperature-wise is good for you.
Yeah.
And so I don't
shower.
Yeah, like that, hormesis.
It's like ice water here in Melbourne.
Yeah, so I don't mind getting a bit cold if I'm having a walk and to get some sun on my forearms and my head.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't worry about nutrients when I'm eating. I'll just eat a wide range of plant foods, whole plant foods, and with no salt and no oil or tiny bit of salt occasionally.
Any examples of foods that you
in breakfast I would have some steamed kale first.
Okay.
With vinegar and nutritional yeast.
Okay.
And then a huge bowl of porridge with lots of berries in it.
Right.
And fresh chopped fruit on top and a bit of soy milk.
Yeah.
And a turmeric latte, which I love, which has lots of spices and turmeric obviously. They're all.
So you have that with almond milk or soy milk?
Soy milk. I prefer soy because it has phytoestrogens which will reduce the risk of getting cancer.
But there's a huge debate on soy saying that it increases your estrogen levels and too much of soy is not good, especially for men.
It's nonsense.
Okay.
So there's no science to back that up.
But is that the GMO soy they're talking about, or is that more...
Either.
If you have organic, you need to have organic...
No, it doesn't matter. Any soy won't give you man boobs. You'd have to drink 20 litres a day or something insane.
Yeah.
There's no science to back that up. And the estrogen in soy is a phytoestrogen, which is a different molecule.
Right.
And it actually downregulates estrogen expression in our body, not increases it. So
I've heard it's good for heart as well, soy.
I haven't heard that, but it does reduce the risk of cancer or of remission into cancer if you've had it.
Okay.
So in that sense, there's some really strong science. It's advisable mainly for that. Almond milk I don't use. Most of the plant milks have added oil, but even if they didn't, almonds have an unfavourable ratio of omega-6 to omega-3.
Okay.
Over 2,000 of 6 to 1 of 3.
All right.
And we tend to get too much omega-6 in the Western diet. So I wouldn't use almonds regularly on that basis.
Okay.
So that's 2 reasons. I like the taste of soy. It's nice in a cup of tea or on my cereal. So I think that's enough to tip me over having that.
Yeah. What's a snack that you normally prefer to have?
Fruit.
Fruit, yeah.
Yeah, natural
Any particular
snack.
fruit or just anything?
Whatever's seasonal.
Yeah.
So pears, bananas, apples, grapes, whatever's around.
Right.
Strawberries, mangoes, depending on the season, stone fruit. You know,
that's something that's changed recently because we get everything through the year now.
We can.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's mangoes through the year in the supermarket, strawberries through the year in the supermarket.
I try to eat more seasonally.
Yeah.
But we do have berries all year round, and I buy the frozen ones.
Yeah.
Because the berries are so super healthy.
Yes.
With those dark colours and the phytonutrients in them. They're very, very good for the health. But
a lot of chemicals in berries, lots of
I buy organic.
Okay.
So I prefer organic.
Pesticides?
The evidence around the pesticides is not super strong, but I suspect it's not a good thing for the gut or us,
Of course.
because they're biocidal chemicals. They're designed to kill life forms. So, but the main reason I support organic foods is for the environment. Particularly, the pesticides are wiping out insect populations.
Right.
And they're in very steep decline globally.
Again, that would affect the quality of soil, wouldn't it?
Well, it's a separate issue. The pesticides kill the microbes in the soil, and we need a healthy soil microbiome
for the food,
for healthy food and for a healthy planet.
Yeah.
But the collapse of the insect populations is particularly alarming, including pollinators, which pollinate 70% of our food supply.
Right.
So if they go, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
In fact, if insects go, we're gone. We won't survive.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we keep doing what we're doing, they will be gone by mid-century.
Wow.
Completely.
Wow.
Like the decline in insects in even the last 30 years.
It's been tremendous.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
In Australia, you couldn't drive at night or dusk without getting completely covered in bugs on your car. In the country.
In the country, yeah.
But
now we don't see that.
No, you don't see it. They've literally collapsed 40, 50, 60, 70% in the last 30, 40 years.
And pesticides do have that.
A huge role in that. Well, they're killing insects. And it's also clearing of land, so there's less habitat for the insects. But it's mainly the pesticides.
Right.
So that really motivates me to support organic farming. And organic farming is supporting a more healthy soil with biosequestration of carbon in the soil. So there's more organic matter in the soil, which is beneficial in so many ways.
I do buy sometimes, and I do notice there's a different taste in organic food. It is slightly more denser, you can say.
I don't notice the taste, but I just prefer to do it for my health and for the environment. But those organic farmers, their soil retains water better and it doesn't run off as quickly. So it's better for flood mitigation, better for drought resistance. There's so many wins if we have organic farming.
Food, right. And what do you normally have for dinner?
Whatever vegetables we've got on hand, we will have it either with pasta or with rice.
Whole grain pasta?
Or wholemeal, always. We don't buy white grains.
Okay.
We don't eat them. We don't have them in the house because they're...
A lot of people don't know this, but whole grain pasta is a very good source of protein as well. People just think of pasta and think of carbs.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at the labeling, it clearly says there's so much protein in 200 grams of whole grain pasta. But what do you normally recommend to a person, let's say someone who's overweight, who comes to you for a diet, let's say they are insulin resistant, they come to you and say, help me out. What would be your process? Walk me through your process with them.
Well, I find out their goals first, and then their situation, who they live with, how much time they have for cooking, do they like cooking, who currently cooks in the house, who shops. All those things make a difference into how easy it is for a person to change. And I also look at their motivation and their current health status, how bad their risk factors are, their age. You know, if they're young, they're 30ish, they've probably got a bit more leeway. If they're 50, 60 or more, then, you know, they're at risk of serious consequences any time, potentially, if they don't change quite a lot. So, but then I will look at what they're eating. So I'll get a 4-day food diary before I see them.
Right.
And an intake form looking at a whole lot of things around how they live and eat and exercise and sleep and stress. To give me a picture of how that person lives and what their risk factors are. And also pathology tests, if I can get them from the GP.
Right.
To see what the risk factors are in a blood test.
The blood test, yeah.
Then, say if they were insulin resistant or diabetic, I'd explain what causes that it's the fat, and help them with a shift to a diet that's a lower fat diet. And advise them to have less animal food if they're willing to do that. That the less they have, the better. The more vegetables, fruit, legumes, whole grains, the better they'll do. I'll teach them how to cook without oil, explain how that works, explain that nuts are very high fat.
Without oil?
Without oil. I'll show them an energy density graph so they can see the differences in caloric density of different foods.
Because oil is a fat, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm correct, fat's the highest calorie source.
By far.
By far. Like it's like something like 1 gram of olive oil would have
9 calories.
9 calories, yeah.
Whereas protein and carbs have 4 calories.
4 calories, a gram
Ethanol
of protein.
has 7. So it's in between. Alcohol,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So
helping them understand that. I'd help people understand the pleasure trap, which is, there's a book of the same name which I highly recommend, and its subtitle is The Hidden Force That Undermines Health and Happiness.
okay.
And it really does. It's the dynamic that's wired into every animal, which motivates that species to survive through the two key behaviours that any animal needs to do, which is have sex to reproduce and eat so they don't starve.
Right.
And that works beautifully in nature because animals will mate when they can, they'll eat when they can get enough food, when there's plenty they'll gorge, and then they'll be able to reproduce. Because if you're too starving, you can't have kids.
You can't do it, yeah.
And so they'll pass on their genes, and that works well. And you never see an obese wild animal or an animal in the wild with diabetes or heart disease. It doesn't happen because they're not eating processed food or hyper-stimulating food out of a factory or cafe or restaurant.
Right.
Or the junk you see in a petrol station.
Yeah.
You know, the chips and Slurpees. So they stay healthy. But so like that pleasure trap, that wiring that gives that animal and us a dopamine hit when we have rich food, it works beautifully in a natural setting without processed food. But in the modern world, we're surrounded by this hyper-stimulating, calorie-dense food that we never evolved to deal with, and it undoes us because people will gravitate to that rich food because it's exactly how they're programmed. It's not their fault. So I like to explain that to people because it takes away their guilt and shame. It's not actually their fault at all.
Right.
They're just behaving exactly as programmed.
Right.
And I have the same dynamic. If there was vegan ice cream in the freezer here, my brain would be thinking about that, and I'd be wanting to go at that ice cream
definitely
all day until it was gone.
Yeah.
That's the pleasure trap.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeking that dopamine hit.
We try and not buy chips and ice cream at home because when it's there, you eat it.
Yeah, of course.
There's no doubt. You just can't not eat it.
If it's in the house, it's in your mouth.
Yeah.
And
so it's just,
the important thing is to not bring it in the house.
and a tip is like, I try to go to a supermarket not hungry. So you always
very smart.
eat before you go.
Yeah.
Because you don't end up buying a lot of things that you probably would have.
Yeah, the most important point is not putting it in the trolley.
Yeah.
But then I'll help people with practical strategies like you just said, not going shopping hungry and controlling their home environment. It's the most important thing you can do. I send people lots and lots of recipes.
And it follows on to children because your children watch you do that.
Yeah,
and that becomes normal to them.
Of course.
If they see you overeating,
and
that
also,
becomes normal to them.
And also how you train them in terms of eating a wide range of plant foods and how you adjust their taste buds.
Yeah.
Because if you give them lots of salty, rich food, their taste buds will get used to that and they'll get addicted to it.
Yeah. But the last question is, most people don't have the discipline that you have. You mentioned motivation, right? What would you say to someone who struggles with discipline of food? Like, how do you overcome that barrier?
It's a difficult one for people, and some people just are wired to have a different personality where they're more highly conscientious or they're less conscientious. And making healthy behaviour changes, it does help if you've got a high level of conscientiousness.
Okay.
And also if you're somewhat disagreeable in the sense that you don't care about other people's judgment. The other end of being disagreeable is being agreeable, so you're a people pleaser. So you'd rather not rock the boat and do what your friends think you should do than look after yourself. So it's complicated and it's a challenge because we live in an obesogenic world. So it really comes down to how much a person values their health, how much they want to get back to good weight and ideal health, get off medications, reduce their pain. Sometimes the most motivated people are the ones who are the most sick and in pain. Yeah. And they have the most to gain because suddenly feeling better is very rewarding.
That's right.
So the benefits of feeling great when you've felt terrible can be very reinforcing and help keep you on track.
That we all want a million things until we're sick.
Yes.
We just want one thing from there.
Yeah, it's a very good saying.
Yeah, and like that's something that really resonated with me because I was sick at the time. I had a fever and I was like, all I want is this fever to go away and nothing else. Yeah. And also similarly, most people don't value their health until they've lost it. Yeah. They take it for granted. They don't. Yeah, and also what I found in my life is that when I used to work full time, as you said, I was surrounded in an environment that had processed food and there were chocolates in the fridge. And there was morning tea with cakes and chocolates and chips and all of that to make the work environment lighter and fun. But a lot of us struggle with there because I used to be very be like, no, I'm not eating that. It was very hard, but I'm not eating that every day. But a lot of people judged you, and you didn't fit in sometimes because of that, and that's a really hard bit because, as you said, the world is that way.
And as I said, it helps if you're a bit disagreeable, so you don't care if other people judge you.
I don't
you say,
really,
it's my life. I value my health, and I'll have a bowl of fruit on my table.
Yeah.
When you have a cake for someone's wedding, I'll come and join you, but I'll bring a banana. And so I'm still there with my cup of tea and banana and celebrating your wedding.
If you go for a wedding, would you still go with a bowl of fruit, or would you just have the cake?
Oh no, this is at a workplace. You have a special morning tea because someone got married. Or they have a baby or whatever.
That's fine. You have it.
Yeah, but I'd bring a piece of fruit. And my drink. But if I was at a wedding, I'd let them know that I was plant-based.
Right.
And that I don't use oil if possible. If it's occasional, and it can throw people for a loop if you ask them to leave out the oil.
How do you survive in India?
It was unhealthy. It was nice food, and you could get vegan, but it was too salty, too oily, and mostly refined grains.
Right.
So actually for the first week or two, we felt a bit constipated, even though it was vegan food.
Right. You did find vegan food. It was easy.
We got vegan food quite easily.
Okay.
But it was way less healthy and with a lot less fruit and veggies and legumes than we normally have.
Okay.
And almost no whole grains.
It's a strange thing because traditionally in India, legumes and lentils are a big part of people's diet all over India.
Yeah.
But as we're going, and India's getting more modern and getting more influenced by the West, they think that's the right way to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't eat Indian food, and they're having Mexican for lunch and burgers for dinner.
And pizza.
And hence, when I went to Italy, I realized that they put such little cheese in the pizza, and the crust is there's literally no crust sometimes. The vegetables make it so soggy that there's no crust. So the Italians don't eat pizza the way we eat it in Australia or India and the US especially. Goodness.
But we ate mostly Indian food.
Yeah.
And even then it wasn't healthy enough for us.
Which is,
because of the salt and the oil and the refined grains. And it didn't include enough vegetables. It obviously wasn't safe to have salad because it's washed in the water.
Yeah.
And the sambar, which would have some vegetables and legumes in it, was just a small part that you put on the idli or the dosa.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the quantity we'd have at home.
Yeah. The idli is actually supposed to be quite healthy. They can be made from good. They just steamed. You can make it from lentils, which is quite healthy. You could make
and the dosa you can make from
same with lentils.
Or millet.
Yeah, you could.
We did get millet dosa occasionally.
Yeah.
Which is not refined.
I think it's called ragi.
Yeah. I make them at home.
Again, with the fiber and everything, it does help. But anyways, Peter, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Lovely speaking with you.
And I hope the audience actually learns, because there was so much knowledge that I hope they get something from it.
Certainly. Yeah. No, I hope that's helpful.
Peter. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.